Now today we will be discussing the recent hijab debate in schools. Last month, Nina Lal, the head teacher of St Stephen's Primary School in Newham, London, imposed a hijab ban on pupils under the age of 8 in her school. More than 19,000 people signed a petition calling for this ban to be lifted. The ban was reversed. The chair of governors who championed the ban stepped down from his role a couple of weeks ago. Since then, Ofsted's Chief Inspector Amanda Spielman has intervened in the dispute between the parents and the head teacher. She's publicly supporting the head teacher, going as far as saying people use religion to actively pervert education. She's also quoted as having said, "Under the pretext of religious belief, people use educational institutions to narrow young people's horizons, to isolate and segregate, and in the worst cases to indoctrinate impressionable minds with extremist ideology." Very strong words there. Now, to discuss this topic with us today, I have two wonderful guests joining me on the show. But first of all, we're going over to Hussein Akhtar over the telephone. Now, Hussein is a retired inspector of schools. He has participated in Ofsted inspections in England. He was also a councillor in the London Borough of Harrow for 6 years. Hussein has been actively involved in community work as a social scientist and has long experience of evaluating institutional policies and practices in a variety of settings, particularly in the areas of equal opportunities and social justice. Hussein also writes regularly for local and national publications. He is now working for Harrow Council for Justice and Harrow Monitoring Group as a voluntary researcher. Welcome, Hussein.
Yes, assalamu alaikum.
Welcome, Salaam. Thank you for joining us today. How are you?
Alhamdulillah, I'm fine.
Good. So you heard my little introduction there on the topic today. Very harsh words, I would say, from Amanda Spielman talking about agendas of isolation, segregation, extremism. What's her role in all of this?
I think it's a quite complex debate because at the moment we are talking about hijab and then about extremism. So I think one can put two things together. It looks like that what is coming from Ofsted HMCI is on both accounts, hijab and extremism. Mm-hmm. So I think that is what the debate is. I think it would be very interesting to understand briefly what are the responsibilities and functions of both the schools and Ofsted.
Yeah.
Now, schools, as we all know, are in a business of teaching children. The schools, and I'm talking about state schools, the authority for the schools is not the local authority, which is the council. It is not the DFE, and it is not Ofsted. But the authority for the school is the school's governing body.
Right.
Now, a school's governing body is independent. They can organize the work of the school as they wish, but within the framework and the legislation which commands the schools, so they can do that. For example, they can't say we are not going to teach national curriculum, mm-hmm. but they can say how we are going to do it. So they can have their own arrangement and organization of teaching, so they can do that. So there is independence on that. On other matters about like food, about dress, about the code of practice, about the ethos, and as I said, about organizing the school's activities, which include both the pastoral and academic curriculum. Governors are totally independent. They can decide whatever they wish to within the framework which I have specified.
Right.
Now, Ofsted, when we go for inspection, we do not question what governors have done unless it is something illegal.
Right.
We look at the school as it is. We look at the effectiveness of the policies and of the work which the management is doing, and basically focusing on three factors. One, the quality of teaching. Second, the quality of learning. And the third one is the management.
Yeah.
Now, there's a fourth aspect as well, which we call SMSC, which is social, moral, spiritual, and cultural development of people. So that is another thing which we look at. Now, for example, we can ask a school that, look, have you done any mapping of SMSC across the curriculum? In other words, all these four values, are they promoted through the subjects like English, like math, like history, like whatever it might be. So I think we can ask that. We never question in terms of what the school is doing about their dress, whatever policy they have, unless it is something which is obscure and, as I said, which is not within the framework, and what they are eating, unless it's unhealthy eating or something. We don't question about various policies, about the uniform policies, or about the structure of how and when people come and in what form they come. Do they come by train, walk by foot? So we don't look into that. We look at the overall big picture, which is about the effectiveness of the school. So I think that is very interesting to understand that. Now, as far as the Ofsted is concerned, I think, as I said, Ofsted does not involve itself into the local practices.
Right.
Now, I can give you some examples of it, which are very interesting. For example, some years back, I inspected a secondary school in London, which was predominantly black populated. So there were black people mostly.
Okay.
This is school, the head teacher and some of the governors, they have certain belief in a section or cross-section of Christianity. I don't know what it is called, but they were quite deeply committed to it. And what was happening was that they had this candle which goes on all the time in the head teacher's office. Classrooms had medallions, various sort of display, and many lessons started with Lord's Prayer. And it was not a faith school.
Right.
It was a state school. Inspectors just noted it with interest. We never raised any question about it, that this is a radicalization or is it involvement and overtaken by Christian ethos or anything like that, because that was not our brief. So we didn't do that. In another example, I remember that it was a primary school, and in lunchtime, quite often, we saw a group of girls sitting separately from others on a table. And they had this typical headband, which normally Jehovah's Witnesses use. So we asked the school, why have you give them any punishment or something? They said, no. It is the parents who wish their children to have lunch separately because they don't want to mix up.
Right.
Now, we did not say to them that, look, you're radicalizing these children, you're depriving them, you're interfering with their freedom or something. We say, okay, if that is the arrangement between the school and the parents and it's working, fine. So there's no problem.
Yep.
So I think the independence of the governing body on these examples, how they do it, and the Ofsted attitude towards it is quite obvious.
So Ofsted doesn't really intervene in uniform policies in schools. That's entirely up to the governors and the school itself.
Whatever they wish to do. I'll give you another example, which is a very interesting example. I inspected a secondary school in Middlesex. Now, that secondary school was doing fine. We were totally amazed to see that the girls, and it's a secondary school, so it's a sixth form as well, the girls were wearing mini skirts, all of them. And we said to the head teacher that, is there any reason? Is that something which you have asked children to do that? Because it might be a risk factor. They have to go out and they're grown up and all that. And head teacher said, no, it is something which parents, modernization and parents wish, and therefore we allow them to wear this, though we are aware that they are mini skirts.
Right.
Now, just this example alone tells that as far as the dress is concerned or the uniform is concerned, it is something which is decided between the school, the parents, and the governing body decide about it, and they can do that. Now, along with that, education all along, for as long as I have been in education and well before that, they emphasize parental involvement.
Yeah.
They say we welcome parents' views, we welcome parents' involvement in the learning of their children and in valuing and promoting the ethos of the school. So there is a strong emphasis on parents and parents' wishes, which include the social, moral, cultural, whatever the wishes might be, they are there. So I think on all those lines, if one looks from that perspective, then this debate about hijab or extremism looks very, very odd. It is not Ofsted brief at all to look into these things. So I think I'm like many other people, I'm shocked and amazed that HMCI has taken these decisions.
So given everything you've said and all the examples that you've given us, Amanda Spielman having intervened, why do you think, from your perspective, why do you think she's intervened in this manner?
I think it is again a complex situation. The situation has been that for the last many years, and if you go back to early 60s, 1960s, somehow education has been used to highlight what is seen is social instability. At that time, it was through immigration.
Right.
And in 1966-67, there were concerns expressed by politicians saying that immigration is a great social problem of the century. Now, they were talking about immigration. They thrust this on schools, and then there was a very interesting dispersal policy where if the number of Asian children in certain schools increased by number, they have to be dispersed to another school. So that was used, immigration was used in 1966-97 as a leverage to highlight immigration, which of course was a very controversial issue. 1980s, another head teacher, Ray Honeyford, it's all public information. Ray Honeyford raised the question and said the multiculturalism in the school somehow is hindering the education for the white children. Now that was like Enoch Powell's bloodbath speech, and it went wild, and the right-wing media and the politicians, everybody picked it up, and this vibrated for many, many years. Resulting that in 1986 or 88, there was a report which was called Burnage Report. Now that Burnage Report came from a school where there was a Bangladeshi boy who was murdered in the playground. Now that was a big national issue, and the whole scenario came, and the report said, there is this institutional racism, there's this and that. So I think that was done. And then lately we have a school scenario in Birmingham where a conspiracy theory, which later on came out as a bogus information, which was that some people are trying to take over some schools, some Muslim people are trying to do that. So that was another scenario where the schools were used for some kind of negativity, which is so obvious. So I think education has some kind of a history where education and schools are used for political debate or political purposes, where, as I said, the immigration became a point. Now, this whole thing got intensified recently because of what happened in EU campaign. And as is general information, immigration was a key point, and within immigration, the people were talking about Muslim people coming, and so the target is scaremongering, the alarming, the fears were raised about various factors, and that was very high debate in EU campaign. So I think it happens from there. And this thing about hijab, actually, it started in Europe at the time when this EU campaign was going, and they were the people who raised this issue first. And they raised the issue about hijab, about women wearing abaya, and all sorts of things. Now, frankly speaking, honestly speaking, working in the community for such a long time in the mainstream, not just Muslim but wider community, I know for sure that when it comes to things like dress, the population in Europe or in UK, people don't give it a damn as to what people wear.
Right.
Still, it is a decent dress. You can wear whatever you want to. You can have skirts, you can have trousers, you can have jeans, you can have whatever it is, and the schools are allowed girls to wear skirts. Now, technically speaking, one can say, you are sexualizing them, the girls telling them that you are a girl, because boys are not wearing the skirt.
Yeah.
But it's not the case. You do that. So I think people are not worried about what you wear, or to that extent what you eat.
So you think there's a bigger agenda at play here then? It's not just about the actual hijab?
That's right. And I think what actually happened is that people have made these things like hijab and dress as a symbol of Muslim value. The debate is about accepting or not accepting Muslim value. It is not about a piece of cloth.
Yeah.
It is about accepting or not accepting Muslim values, and that is where the resistance to it, that is where the politicization of it comes. That is where the far extreme right comes into it, and media and all that. So I think the debate is not about a piece of cloth at all.
Yeah.
Nobody says that. It is about the value which it stands.
Yeah.
And the question is whether we accept Muslim value or not.
Yeah.
So it is a highly political situation, unfortunately. Nothing to do with education.
Yeah.
It has no education validity whatsoever.
Okay.
So I think it is very concerning and alarming.
Yeah. It is very concerning indeed. Hussein, do we know the statistics of young girls who wear the hijab in mainstream schools?
I don't think if that figure is available.
Right.
I don't think so, because nobody has counted it, so there's no head count on it. But I think what is happening, and again there is associated information about that, you might know, or your listeners might know, there was a review recently last year which is called Cassie Review. Now the Cassie Review was commissioned by the previous Prime Minister, and it was about to look at what they called deprivation within dense Muslim populated areas like Birmingham, Bradford, Manchester. And this Cassie Review came out with many recommendations, which were all throwing all kind of negativity on the community without addressing why things are as they are. And they were talking about the deprivation, lack of language, people not speaking English language, there's a need to do that, people have to take an oath of loyalty to the crown and all. That sort of review came out. Now that review, within it, had the evidence base which goes back to education. So I think it's a vicious circle which is going on for the last couple of years, where things are happening, but the thrust of all that is to somehow question certain people, create a scaremongering about them, having the negativity, and then of course there is the political dimension, because there are people, many people with Muslim names, there are Asian people who would like to sort of take side of what the institutions are doing and what the authorities are doing for their own reasons. And those people seems to giving some kind of reinforcement to what has been said and done. But they are only few, a fraction, small fraction. Rest of the people, and again, I mean, I must give it credit, people in education is, because of course I have worked extensively with the very high caliber HMIs, who are the people who are the cream of education, and others, curriculum development and all that. All those people, they don't look into these petty things. They are sophisticated thinkers. They think seriously. They are concerned in education about education standards, about the welfare of the children, about how to provide better job opportunities, and how to make, if you like, better social models for the society which we have. So I think majority of people in this country are not of that view. It is a small group who is banded to fall in the hands of right wing, and of course substantial supported in a way because right-wing media, far-right media I should say, are very good in recycling all that, and has been for half a century. So I think this is a vicious circle, which I think as a social scientist I'm very worried that is not good for the British society, for the people who are living here, not us but others as well, and it creates a very negative environment to be educated, to live in, to work, and whatever it is. So it's a quite concerning situation.
Yeah. So from an educational expert perspective, there are far bigger things to worry about than just a piece of cloth
of course.
Little girls are wearing in school. How can Muslim communities challenge this sort of attempted ban? How can we move forward from this?
I think what seems to be happening so far, which I can understand, is that when some issues like this comes about extremism or hijab, people immediately go defensive. And what they do is they try to explain, no, it's good, it's not religious, we do that, girls are wearing hijab because mom is doing. They try to justify, but not appreciating that all those things are very well known. People who are criticizing and taking these steps, they know far better than other people as to what is the significance of a hijab, dress, diet, or whatever it is. So it is not that. I personally feel that this whole thing is well seated in political arena, and it is because people want to bring this question about hijab, about extremism, about that. Politicians can't do that for obvious reasons. They can't afford the backlash. So I think their job has been done by some other people. So I think, but debate is about political. I'm very surprised that while these statements are coming from HMCI, there has been no political reference either by the shadow education people or by the Labour Party about that what you're saying and what is happening is not good for the community. There is no public statement as such coming out from the Labour Party.
Right.
And I'm very surprised why is that. And I think, in my view, it is that people have to approach their elected representatives, the people who seems to be representing them, from all sorts of people, Muslims, non-Muslim, whatever it is, MPs, councillors, and ask them as to why Labour is silent about all these matters. And I think they have to come out, because if you and me come out with another people, it is seen as a marginal activity. We are supposed to do that. I think in all good things, it has to be the wider community has to come out and condemn these kind of strategies which are crucial, because it is not good for education, it is not good for children, it is not good for parents. So I think in my view, the way forward is to approach the representatives from the opposition, because the administration is part of it. So we have to approach opposition and say to them, why you're silent? Why you're not saying anything about it? And I'm sure that might make a difference.
Yeah. I mean, clearly Muslim communities can challenge this sort of thing, can't they? I mean, we saw that 19,000 people signed a petition, and actually that, and because of the petition, the ban was reversed. So clearly we do have, as a Muslim community, we do have some power.
Yes, but I think we are talking about a sort of wide issue. Because when it came to one school, okay, you can have a petition, you go there, you can even have a demonstration, and perhaps the school will change its mind. But HMCI involved in this sort of thing is not something which can be resolved by a petition, because it is more deeper than that. It is well seated, it is well institutionalized, it is an institutional issue, not about just one school. So that has to be tackled at that level. And that level, unfortunately, has to be the political level, because that is where it's coming from.
So if it becomes more normalised and more mainstream in across schools, across all over the United Kingdom, that's when we need to sort of start taking worrying more actually, and doing more to perhaps liaising with the MPs and doing what we can on a political level to try and change the situation.
That's right, because one of the things which HMCI has lately said about extremism is that she's asking the head teachers to confront those who they think might have extremist behavior. Now, schools and the head teachers are not the controlling bodies. They are not the people whose job it is to evaluate the behavior of the parents and the community. I mean, they can do it if they want to the children, but they are not there to do that.
They're there for the children, not for the parents.
No. So they can't do this sort of what generally say. And that is the reason that teachers' unions have been very strict about it. NUT has taken very big step about totally discrediting preventive strategy. They had a resolution passed saying that we discredit and disown this policy. We are not going to operate it. And that was a very bold decision. So I think the trade unions are, and many teachers and head teachers, I mean, honestly, they think that, look, we are in the business of teaching. School is about teaching. We are not here to monitor behavior, to monitor what is in people's mind and head. Especially, the demand is coming from the Home Office, not coming from Education Department. It's coming from the Home Office. And because it is coming from the Home Office, it is a controlling mechanism rather than improving the situation.
Hussain, thank you very much for joining us today. Unfortunately, we've run out of time. I know there's lots more that you could have said on the topic, but the bottom line, I suppose, is that it's a matter for individual schools to decide on how to accommodate their children, and Ofsted is not there to intervene. With regards to uniform and things like that. They're there to maintain